Welcome to our second episode of 2022. Hi, Ez.
Hey Jay, how's it going?
Busy as usual. Busy.
Always. A lot happening at the moment. I know you're very busy with certain activities right now, aren't you?
Yeah, I am actually. So in December, we, we we've wrapped up a lot of stuff that we've been working on. So we're sort of moving out of the sort of dev phase. We're coming out of alpha, and we're moving now into our beta phase, closed beta, and we're now looking to raise. Yeah. So I mean, the very last activity we did was penetration testing, which is, making sure the app is secure and like that. But now it's like, getting the pitch deck ready. So it's out of taking my head out of the code now and moving it into the pitch deck, which is
Good
just
stuff.
It's a different space altogether. It's a different.
No, it is. But that's the true job, right? That's
Yeah.
As a founder, as CEO, that's where your focus needs to be. Fundraising. There's some debate. I see a lot of articles around how too many CEOs spend too much time focusing on fundraising, not enough time on building sustainable businesses, etc., etc. That's true. That's absolutely true. There needs to be a combination of both, right? Because the reality is with a lot of SaaS-based models, which is what you're building, it's actually very hard to build a scalable model without external capital at the beginning because of the way that the financing works. If you are selling the full value of a yearly license up front, or even a 5-year license up front, you can probably scale fairly quickly without external financing, right? Because you've got that almost direct CapEx coming straight into your business. That's not how SaaS works.
No.
Month by month, trickles in. So you have to build that organization and the technology and the scale before you start to benefit from the revenue, which means you need external capital to get you moving. So I know that's the piece that you're looking at right now.
Yeah, and I mean, the cornerstone of that really is actually the financial plan, because when you speak to investors, they know this. What you've just said there, they know this. They know that you're speaking to them because you've probably run out of cash. Yeah. And you've got people to pay, and you want to scale, and you want to move to the next stage. And so they want you to somehow demonstrate actually that, there is a real business model behind what you're building. Yeah. And it's not just a nice product. Yeah. It's actually a sustainable business that is actually going to grow. So they're going to get some return on the investment that they put in now. Yeah. And so this is what it's all about. It's explaining that. So it's telling that story. So it's telling the story of your products and services and how they will evolve over time, but not just evolve over time, but also evolve in a way that there is growth, there is revenue growth. Yeah, as well. Yeah.
No, 100%. So I guess, where do you want to focus this one, Jay? Because obviously you're going through it at the moment. I've got a lot of experience on the fundraising side.
Yes, I mean, I've had my first investor meeting of the year. Actually, it was today. Actually,
How did that go?
I think it went okay. Actually, it was. We did the pitch, and that was about about 8 minutes long, the pitch, and then we moved into actually demoing the product as well, which was good, and it seemed to be well received by the VC firm that we were in discussions with. So we're waiting to hear back. But what was interesting is the stuff that they focus on. Yeah. And I think there's a number of boxes that you need to tick when you're going into these when you're going into these discussions. And I know we've talked about the money, but it really is the whole story. So they want to know, right, they really want to know what is the problem you're trying to solve. Yeah. Yeah. Is this problem something that they're interested in solving with you actually? Yeah. And then how are you going to solve it? But then, and how novel is your solution? Yeah. Yeah. What is your sort of USP? Yeah. And then in that space that you're in, what is the market? Yeah. So what's the size of the market? Is it something that they can get excited about? Yeah.
Yeah.
And are there other players in that market that show that that the market, that particular space is really, really active? Yeah. So these are the sort of questions, these are the sort of narratives that are running through, that should be sort of running through your pitch as well. And then they really want case studies as well. They want to see that people have got a feel, and people will really want to use what you've got to offer as well. So you've got to give a flavor of all of those sort of things. And in all of that, you need to show that you're a capable team. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
100%.
need to show that you're a team that can deliver. Yeah. And, but also is open to feedback, because you might not have the right solution now. Yeah. But can you get there? Yeah. So this is something that's really interesting. So you've almost got to tell the story, but also be listening to their feedback and being able to respond to their feedback as well. So these are the sort of narratives that are running through, I think, the pitch alongside the financial model. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I mean, everything you said there is really spot on, right? And it's great to hear just how much of that you've now internalized, because obviously we talked a lot about pitch decks and approach and model. And so it sounds like the experiences you're having have really been impactful in terms of where you're going with that now. And I know you're going to have a lot more of these conversations,
I know.
right?
And in light of that, Ez, I'm going to ask you now. So, I
All
mean,
right, go for it.
so have you got any tips, Ez, then? So what should I be doing? What should I be looking out for? I mean, and I know you've done it because obviously you've done it with Neighbor. So you've raised with Neighbor.
Yep.
And now you're on the other side of the fence, actually, now providing funding to startups as well.
Yep.
So when you were in Neighbor, what were the sort of things that you were making sure that, the investors were hearing? And then on the other side of it, what are the sort of things that you're looking for in particular that will sort of prick your ears up and think, right, actually, they might have something, and I think this is something that we should be looking to invest in?
Yeah, so Neighbor's interesting because I think we raised over 200 million at Neighbor.
Yeah,
A combination of equity and debt financing, right, from some pretty big players, a lot of family offices, angels, or high net worth individuals, and then debt financing through the likes of Goldman Sachs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at Neighbor, bear in mind I was the CTO, so I was involved in the fundraising process, but I would be lying if I said I led on the fundraising at Neighbor. But I was very much involved in it, in some of the conversations and the rest, and reviewing the materials and trying to come up with those decisions. And then, as you said, at Impactx, we now invest in startups, and we've invested in over 10 so far, and we've already had a unicorn come out of that portfolio. And now at Impactx, we're actively fundraising ourselves for our big funding round, which is the big £100 million fund that we're building. So I've been every aspect and every side of this equation, of this piece, right? So I think the most important thing really is to get that narrative and story right. And it really comes down to understanding your problem and the market that you're going into, and making sure you've got the right team to do it, because so many focus really on what they're building, and that's really where their core focus. We're building this really cool thing and it's amazing. And I remember doing it as well, right? When we're building Neighbor, I was a technologist. I was so excited around the CQRS, the event sourcing technology and architecture that we were building. And I built the core platform. And that's really what I was talking about. And if I heard someone say all that to me now as an investor, I'd be like, oh my God, what's this guy doing? Right. That's all great, but stop pitching that. And I think I keep saying to you, forget the tech.
Yeah. Don't talk about the tech.
Talk about everything else. And I think the most important thing you really want to hear is a good understanding of your problem space and the market around it. So what is it that you're trying to solve, and why is this problem important? What is the scale of the opportunity here, and who else is doing this, and why are you better than them, right? And what outcomes have they seen? Because all of that tells us there is an opportunity, right? Ultimately, as investors, what we're looking for is a return. We might be looking for impact, we might be looking for change, but ultimately we need a return for us, our fund, and our investors. So those are the things we need to understand. What is the return profile here? What is the opportunity? Once we understand that, it then comes down to, is this the team to do it?
Yeah.
Right? Is this the team to do it? And what are we seeing that lets us know this is the team to do it? And that's where it comes down to, what's the team's experience? What's their background? Who's in this team and why? What have they as a company achieved? Right? Have they executed? Have they got a product built? Have they launched it? Have they got traction? Have they started to win customers or acquire an audience? Whatever that traction metric may be. Because then when you start to see all those things, you can go, actually, even we think there's an opportunity here. We've got a great team. It might turn out that opportunity is not the right opportunity, but everything they've done has executed against a plan to take advantage of that opportunity. And even if it turns out that's not the right one, we believe they're going to go ahead and be successful. So then it comes down to, how prepared is this team, right? And this is where you start looking at things like data rooms. You start looking at things like financial planning and forecasting, quality of their pitch deck, all the other supporting materials that they need. And this is where you talk about being investor ready. And there are a lot of founders that just aren't investor ready. They're not investor ready. They don't really understand why they're speaking to you and what they should be looking for and what questions they should be asking. They don't have the materials they need to build a compelling case. They haven't, successfully executed on a plan. They have zero traction. And really, they just have a PowerPoint and they're hoping to win you over in terms of pure enthusiasm. Now, I'll be honest, there is a cohort of founders for whom that approach can work. But for a lot of us, that's just not realistic, right?
So what's interesting actually is that a lot of the stuff that you were talking about, so you talked about actually, so there's like, it seems like there's two components. There's the actual, there's the actual product or service that's being built, and there's the team, that are executing. And it seems like actually there is more weight on the team, so you're actually investing more into the capabilities and the potential of the team than the actual product and service that they're offering itself. So is that actually the case then?
I'd say that's definitely true at early stage, right? When we say early stage, we mean less than $1 million in revenue, seed, maybe even Series A, right? So you've raised less than a couple of million. You might not even be at $1 million in revenue. That is still pretty early, right? From an investor perspective. And at that stage, we still recognize that the idea, the product might not be right? But the team, if it's the right team with enough traction, with enough investment, enough runway, they can get there. When you're looking at later stage, Series B onwards,
then it's the product,
then it's the product. Have you got you don't want them to be pivoting
No.
at that time, right? They need the right product. Team does become important because now you're very firmly focused on exit, right? At this stage, is this the right team to get this product to IPO? Is this the right team to get this product to acquisition, right? It might be that they're not, but they're so well positioned that the right team can come in the next year or so to get this to where it needs to be. And that's often the case. It's actually quite unusual for the founding team to take a company all the way to IPO, right? It really is. So at that later stage, team is important, but it depends on what you're looking for. And to be honest, if you're looking at IPO, actually the CFO becomes the most important individual. Do you have a CFO who's IPO'd a company, right? Yes, you do. Big tick, right? But that is at that latter Series B, Series C stage, right? The early stage, that's less important. Do you have the right team who can build and execute on a vision and create a great and engaging product and win customers? So it really depends at what point you're looking at the company.
So Ez, I mean, we've been talking a lot about, getting investment from VCs, but what are the other funding routes for early stage startups?
Yeah, so that's a really important question, and there are multiple, right? And actually, a lot of startups focus on VC when they're too early for VC. VC, you've got to bear in mind, VCs don't have any kind of what's the word, tax relief. They've got no downside protection. They're investing other people's money fundamentally, and it's usually investment by committee. So you have to go through an investment committee process in order to be able to draw down the funding to invest, and it's usually against a very well-defined thesis. So, for example, maybe this VC only invests in B2B fintech in cryptocurrency, servicing UK only, right? That's their thesis. So that's the only thing that they can look at. So you've got to look at VC funding as a niche form of funding, which you may not be ready for yet, right? For others, you have, starting at the very beginning, you've got friends and family. So these are people that you know or in your network. Doesn't necessarily have to be people you actually know, just people you're connected to in some way who want to put in their own money. And it might be very small amounts, might be 5K, it might be 500,000, depending on these individuals, right?
Yeah, your ability.
Friends and family leading up to, and then that touches on the angels, the super angels, the high net worths. These are all people who are putting in their own cash into your business because they believe in you fundamentally. And then you have what we call family offices. These are the types of organizations where it might be an ex-trader who's made hundreds of millions on commodities. He's now set up a business that basically invests his money. It might be a family with an endowment trust that has historically built up wealth, and now they're looking to not only maintain but grow that wealth down the generations, and they look to invest. You get a lot of them out in Switzerland, for example, a lot of Swiss family offices. Then and those can be equity, or it can be advanced subscription agreements. It can be convertible loan notes. It can be safe notes if you're looking at like the Y Combinator type models. So those are all great routes to raise money from at the early stage. Other things that you should always consider is incubators and accelerators as well, especially if you haven't got traction yet. Traction is really important. And when we talk about traction, we mean, sales to customers, closing contracts, or just driving revenue, or ultimately engagement with your audience, whatever that might be. And really, incubators and accelerators are there to help you achieve those aims. And some will give you small amounts of funding, from 10K up to 150, depending on the program you go through. Some will be equity free, or just be a grant. So Google did that through the Black Founders Fund. I think it was 100, 250K in funding for no equity. Others will want a percentage off the back of that. And then ultimately, you then have other debt type options. There's startup loans that you can apply for, 25 grand startup loan. And you have grants as well from the likes of UKRI, so Innovate UK, you can apply for through their various competition funds and the rest. And depending on the sector you're in, there might be different options. So for example, if you're in the water sector, as some of you may know, I'm an advisor, I'm on the steering committee for Spring, which is a centre of excellence for the water sector. And they're an enabling organisation. It's enabling bids for the Ofwat £200 million Water Innovation Fund. So there are quite a few options out there, but you have to know where to look. You have to be at the right stage. You have to have the right material, and you have to put together a great pitch deck, a great product, and be able to reach out and apply through these organizations.
So it sounds like there's no real ideal time to actually start fundraising, or essentially certain investors will, you would deal with certain investors at particular time or particular particular progress through your
So on that, just very quickly, is there an ideal time? The best time is when you don't need to raise money, right? Just honestly, it sounds ridiculous, but the best time is when you don't need to raise, right? Because what you don't want is you've got 2 months of runway left and you desperately need to raise, because on average it takes 4 to 6 months to raise, on average, right? So you've definitely got to give yourself a lot of runway before you start fundraising. Secondly, depending on the type of investor will determine the stage at which you need to be at. Friends and family, maybe just a PowerPoint is great. Or if you've got previous experience launching and exiting a startup, then a PowerPoint and going to a fund may get you there, right? But if you're trying to deal with the more professional, sophisticated investors, typically they like to see some execution and some traction before you start fundraising. Ultimately, though, for me, the sooner the better. The sooner you can start having those conversations, the better. But make sure you're prepared. We often say, people say you only get one chance to make a first impression. But what they mistake with that is that the first impression is about how developed the startup is. No, the first impression is how competent do you come across in your pitch. If you come across incompetent in that pitch, you're not getting another shot, right? But you can come across really well in that pitch, but your startup just isn't quite ready yet. And they'll say, look, come back to me when things are looking more promising, when you're in a position that we can actually start to measure the traction. And then let's talk. But I really want to hear from you, right?
So effectively, the pitch is almost like a reflection of how you execute or how you would execute. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah, no, 100% agree with you. It's a reflection on you. It's a reflection on your team's capability. And, you have to bring yourself fully prepared to those pitches. Jay, whenever we talk about pitching, and it's like this is the information you need to be ready with, right? So many founders go into a pitch and they just can't answer basic questions about their startup, and that's a problem.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're sort of wrapping up now. So what would be the last sort of nuggets that you would give to any startups who are looking to fundraise?
Honestly, the most important thing is social capital. It's networking. Get out there, meet people. You are going to need to speak to a lot of investors, 100 at least, I would say. You're not going to get investment unless you're extremely lucky off those first 5-10 conversations. You're going to have a lot of conversations, and they will want to understand who else you're speaking to. It's always the question. Okay, so you're fundraising. What other investors are you speaking to? Jay, you know this yourself. You got asked exactly that question.
Yeah, I was today. Yeah.
Who else is interested? Who else is potentially coming into your round, etc., etc., etc. So you need to have a network of people. Get out there, meet people, reach out through your own network. Don't be shy. Make use of it. And you know what? That will only help with finding talent, with finding procurement managers, getting sales, building traction. All of that is useful. So that is probably the number one thing you can do as a startup. Start networking.
Excellent. So I think, Ez, this has been great. Actually, I think there's some great nuggets there to take away for our listeners. So at this point, I'd like to say bye and catch up next time.
Fantastic. It's been fun. So looking forward to our next Code Untapped Tech Talk.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.